Let's check out on this extended burn section here. Let's check out this last article. Mexico's wheat fields help feed the world. They're also releasing a dangerous greenhouse gas. So short end of the stick here, exactly what's going on is when nitrogen is applied to fields that have nothing growing in it, unfortunately, a lot of the nitrogen can be released into the atmosphere as nitrous oxide gas. And according to some of the things we see here is that emerging scientific evidence suggests that Mexico's emissions of nitrous oxide are significantly underestimated. Emissions may be double or even quadruple what the country reports. It's a problem that the Mexican government acknowledged to the Washington Post for the story. As a contributor to climate change, nitrous oxide remains a mysterious villain, crudely measured and less studied than carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. But it has caused 6.5% of the world's current warming, and its concentrations in the atmosphere is growing at an accelerating rate, surpassing even some of the worst projections. The gas is 265 times more powerful than carbon dioxide in heating the atmosphere over a period of 100 years. It depletes the planet ozone layer, and it lingers in the air for more than a century. And here, particularly, they're saying that due to the farming methods employed in Mexico, is that there is an unfortunate, huge amount of nitrous oxide that's being released from the fields here. Gentlemen, I want y'all to kind of dive in on this. What do you think? Is this is this something where, as educators, need to be on the ground floor teaching different farming methods to these countries that may not have had exposure to the latest advancements in agriculture? Would that be a solution? What is the solution? I don't know.
It's education and awareness first and foremost. That here's the bottom line right now as to where it stands. There's a good quote from the article here that says, "For the farmer, the cost of fertilizing too much is less than the cost of fertilizing too little." Okay, the cost of fertilizing too much is less than the cost of fertilizing too little. So I think some of this hopefully gets worked out just by the markets and the fact that it ain't going to be cheap to fertilize anymore. It's not going to be 10 years ago where you could slug out there whatever you wanted to and it didn't really matter. How quickly that makes its way down to Mexico, I don't know. We'll have to see. Excuse me. They talk a little bit too about somebody we've discussed on this show, Norman Borlaug, who won a Nobel Prize because of his teaching of and development of a specific kind of agriculture and breeding techniques that allowed for basically industrialized agriculture as we know it today, right? It's advanced obviously since he was involved, but what they talk about, there's a statue of him there because he was credited as feeding the world, right? The guy that fed the world, and the way that he developed and implemented and taught this method of industrialized agriculture. And so it's hard for them to break away from this, this reliance on fertilizer, because that was a huge component of what Borlaug preached. And so, you look at where this is going, and it's now time. It's the right time to get out there and teach the 4 R's, right? Which is another article coming up here that we'll talk about related to that. But the question is, Ray, who's going to do this? Because there is no, extension agent, at least that I know of, in Mexico. I'm not sure how it works in some of these developing nations.
How do we do this? There are actually educators, from the various universities in Mexico, and they basically have to fight against tradition, and they have to
throw her down.
Exactly. They got to fight against some really, I'm going to call, lazy practices, because I got asked on the Discord, and this person really wanted to know, why do growers insist on throwing down fertilizer in the fall on bare ground, knowing that they're not going to plant actually until spring. And I said the basic reason why is because it is cheaper labor and time wise to just blast out on top of a barren field rather than put down the material precisely at planting time or side dress the crop after the crop has been put in the ground. I mean, there is a certain cost and logistical issue. However, speaking to what we've been talking about, at what point does fertilizer become so expensive that nobody can afford to throw down, say, 200 pounds per acre of nitrogen 6 months before you're actually going to plant? At what point does it get to be so damned astronomically expensive that, oh Lord, UAN or anhydrous is no longer dirt cheap anymore? I mean, at what point do we get there to where precisely placing the product at the actual point of use and when it's actually going to be used becomes more economical than just throwing it down?
I'm going to ask this question to the panel real quick: is at what point do we get to this point in turf, right? That I'm just saying that there is a, whether you're a pro, I don't care what side of you're on, pro, DIY, golf, sports, lawn care, whatever. There is a subset of people in this industry that are lazy by default, meaning that they over apply, so that just the same thing here with the fertilizer, right? That or the fertilizer quote, that it's cheaper for them to over apply than to under apply, right? In terms of the cost of doing business. So what's going to break this? Is it going to be the fertilizer prices? Is it going to be some epiphany of environmental awareness? Is it going to be people like us just beating it into their heads that they need to do better? I'm at a loss. I don't know what that's going to take. I really don't.
You know what I think? I think it's going to be none of the above. Where I'm a pessimist in that. Here's what's going to happen is once the activists get a hold of the information or the statement made in this article, you know what they're going to call for in Mexico? They're going to go down to Mexico and literally pull the Sri Lanka in Mexico. They're going to do it. They're going to say, okay, no more chemicals, no more fertilizer, party's over. And likewise, to answer your question, laziness and enough don't give a fuck is going to be what basically kills the golf and turf grass fertilization industry for us too. You know, enough of that don't care, it's cheaper for me to do it this way is going to be what finally gives ammunition to the activists, and they now have enough ammunition to torpedo us. We're going to end up like the USS Arizona. Sorry.
I have a bit more of an optimistic view on it, and I think there will be a shift, and I think it's cultural, right? So all of the things that Ryan mentioned will be necessary. I think there's going to have to be turnover within the industry when the old heads move out that did it a certain way. I think there's going to have to be greater educational opportunities for people that are within the industry and continuing education. I think there's going to have to continue to be people like us that beat down the doors. and remind people that there is an evolution occurring within the industry. And I think the evolution is already occurring. It may not be happening at the appropriate pace, but I can tell you that, with as many people reach out to us with positive praise or words of encouragement or keep going, thank you for what you do, is because there are people out there that genuinely care about moving towards a more sustainable approach or long-term positive impact approach to what they do out there. And I think as the research dollars increase, as automations increase, as data analytics increase, we're going to continue to develop and have data sets that we can all look at and make those individual changes that will allow us to do better things as managers while we're out there, right? So it was funny. Ray, you said what, or Ryan said, what is it going to take? And Ray said, none of it is going to fix it. They're all going to shut it down. And I tried to take a little bit of more of an optimistic approach and say, well, it's going to take all of it is required in order for there to be a change. So I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. That's one of the things that we can continue to check in on. But I'll tell you that as heavily as dependent as the United States is on Mexican agriculture, if they did pull a Sri Lanka, boy, oh boy, I don't think the U.S. would even allow that to happen. I think there would be some major intervention before that occurred.
Actually,
all of that.
I know that.
Go ahead.
Actually, I know already. The United States does try to keep somewhat of a leash on what goes on in Mexico, because the problem is that, you know how I say we export all of the dirtiness and nastiness that we don't want in the United States to countries like Mexico? Well, thing is that Mexico then exports all of that nastiness and dirtiness back to us in the form of fruits and vegetables, for example. So there is some incentive, for example, to kind of keep things down to a certain degree because we got to eat it.
Could you imagine the soccer moms at Whole Foods strutting around in their post barre yoga afterglow, wondering where the hell their strawberries in November are, and just having an absolute meltdown? What do you mean there's no strawberries? They're not in season, you dumb. Gentlemen, let's check out this week's returns. Thank you for watching this clip. Be sure to tune in to the Burn and Return podcast on any of your favorite podcast apps every Wednesday, where we discuss the industry's hottest news.